Donald Trump loves to throw tantrums about his trade wars, the dumbest, most self-destructive economic blunders in modern history. But getting called out for it? That's a whole different story, and this time he couldn't handle it. After MSNBC hosts Lawrence O'Donnell and Stephanie Ruhle shredded his disastrous tariff policies and called out his cognitive slip-ups, Trump went into full meltdown mode on Truth Social, lashing out in a bizarre, unhinged rant. It's classic Trump. He can dish it out, but the second someone calls him on his nonsense, he snaps. This isn't just a bad look, it's a flashing neon sign that his paper-thin ego can't handle even the slightest pushback. It's the kind of meltdown that leaves his staff scrambling to clean up the mess, desperately trying to control the damage while he spirals online. Alright, we're going to break it all down, from the brutal takedowns by O'Donnell and Ruhle to Trump's wild online freakout. But before we dive into the chaos, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, here's the clip that sparked Trump's latest social media meltdown.
This is the 26th day in a row in which Donald Trump has come out a total loser in the trade war that he launched, which he promised to end by negotiating 90 international trade deals in 90 days. Donald Trump made that promise 26 days ago and has negotiated exactly 0 trade deals. 0. The Trump score has been 0 every day of his trade war. Presidential failure could not be more vivid than that. And that's Donald Trump's own scorebook for failure. 90 deals in 90 days, that's what he said. He's got 0. Donald Trump now looks and sounds more exhausted of his own trade war and losing his own trade war every day, just exhausted by it. Losing his trade war seems to be aging him more rapidly than he might otherwise be aging now at 78. And Donald Trump is saying things now that he has never said before. Donald Trump appears to be losing more than his trade war. There are public moments now where he seems to be losing his mind, like when he sits beside the Prime Minister of Canada in the Oval Office and he describes his desire to seize control of Canada. We are now in the 7th day of Mental Health Awareness Month, and no one has ever made this country more aware of mental health every day than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is trying to cut over $800 billion from the largest mental health provider in the country, Medicaid. And then, of course, there's Donald Trump's own mental health, which has been called into question since his first presidential campaign, which led a group of 27 psychiatrists to co-author a book published in the first year of the Trump presidency titled The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 27 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess a president. Some of the co-authors of that book appeared on this program at that time and told us about what they observed in Donald Trump's public behavior that indicated he was possibly suffering from grave conditions, including malignant narcissist and sociopath. They warned us at the time, in that first year of the first Trump presidency, that everything they were seeing and that we were seeing that was problematic in Donald Trump's mental health was only going to get worse. They warned us. They agreed that Donald Trump's mental health could only move in one direction over time in his 70s.
Donald Trump is a clown, not just in the sense that he's an embarrassment to the office, but in the way he deliberately wrecks everything he touches. His incompetence isn't just a side effect, it's part of the plan. Break the system, convince people government doesn't work, then swoop in to strip it down, cut the safety nets, and hand out tax cuts to his billionaire buddies. That's the Trump playbook. But it's not just about greed. Trump's also doing this because he's a narcissist. He wants to carve up the government, keep the best pieces for himself, and leave the rest in ruins. And let's be real, it's not just about ego. There's a deeper problem here, one his staff is constantly trying to cover up: cognitive decline. Trump's mind isn't as sharp as it used to be, and when people like Lawrence O'Donnell point it out, it sends his team into full-blown panic mode. They scramble to hide the truth, plug the leaks, and keep the facade intact. All right, let's dig into this Daily Beast piece that has Trump's staff sweating and scrambling to keep his image intact.
Trump aide loses it at MSNBC host for discussing president's mental illness. Donald Trump's top aide had a furious response after an MSNBC host questioned the president's mental health. MSNBC host Lawrence O'Donnell had called Trump's cognitive functions into question, speculating that his recent remarks, in which he said he doesn't know whether it's his job to uphold the Constitution, could be a sign of mental illness, or it could be a sign of early-stage dementia in a 78-year-old man. But the White House communications director, Stephen Chung, shot back at the veteran news anchor in a statement to the Daily Beast, accusing O'Donnell of clearly suffering from a debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome that has rotted his brain.
Of course, the White House isn't thrilled that the obvious is being called out, that Trump's trade war is a monumental disaster. It's not just MSNBC hosts like Lawrence O'Donnell and Stephanie Ruhle pointing this out. Even the Wall Street Journal, not exactly a bastion of left-wing thought, has admitted that Trump's tariffs were a colossal mistake, a blunder of epic proportions that hurt American businesses and consumers more than anyone else. But the moment someone says it out loud, the meltdown begins. Trump can't handle the truth, and neither can his inner circle, who scramble to spin the story and distract from the damage. It's like a reflex at this point. Attack the media, blame the fake news, scream about witch hunts, and hope the base keeps buying it. All right, I want to dive into what Trump had to say in his unhinged rant, and then we'll get to Stephanie Ruhle's full takedown. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss this one. But before we get into it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around for the truth they don't want you to hear.
I just watched an exhausted, highly neurotic Stephanie Ruhle spew lies about tariffs, as do many others, in order not to give me the victory that they all see coming. Few people know Stephanie Ruhle, but I do, and she doesn't have what it takes. Our deal with the United Kingdom yesterday was amazing for both countries, and in addition to everything else, British Airways just ordered $10 billion worth of new Boeing planes. We're going to make a fortune with tariffs. Only smart people understand that, and Stephanie was never known as a high IQ person. MSDNC has become the voice of the Democratic Party, and they should be treated as a political advocate with all of the taxes and penalties therefrom. Their ratings are terrible, but Brian Roberts and his crew should be forced to tell the truth. Make America great again.
And here we go again. Trump falling back on his tired old IQ rants, the same lame defense he always uses when he's cornered. The irony here is almost too rich. He's trying to attack someone like Stephanie Ruhle, a woman who actually made a name for herself on Wall Street, who understands the markets in a way Trump never will. She's the real deal. Someone who can actually break down the numbers, the trends, the hard truths about what's happening in the economy, while Trump just flails around spouting nonsense about tariffs and trade deficits. But here's the thing. Ruhle didn't just let this one slide. She teamed up with Chris Hayes and Jen Psaki to deliver a brutal, fact-packed takedown of Trump's economic failures. They laid it all out. The stupidity of his tariffs, the damage to American businesses, the billions lost in pointless trade wars, and it hit Trump right where it hurts. All right, you're going to want to see this. Let's take a look at this perfect call-out, where Trump's paper-thin economic bravado gets torn to shreds.
Trump made some strange comments in the Oval Office today. You talked about and I talked about. What'd you make of today?
Well, I think the trade deal, I loved the clip of the China trade deal because I'd actually forgotten that one, so that brought me back, and of course, like, it never was anything. The memory I had today watching the UK trade deal was there was this Friday early in COVID where he did this thing in the Rose Garden where he brought all these CEOs out, and he did this whole dog and pony show where, like, Google's got to have a test, like a new website, and then CVS is going to have tests in the parking lot. And, like, none of it was true. It was all completely vaporware. And when you scratch the surface on this, like, trade deals take a long time to negotiate, A. They have a lot of details that are real granular policy details, B. And C, he cannot make a deal. There is no deal to be done with him because anything that's actually going to be binding is going to have to go through Congress. He's not going to do it. And the final thing, and this point that Steve made that I thought was important, is the 10% wall around the country, he is absolutely tied to. Everything else might be negotiable, but tripling the current baseline tariff is something he really wants to do, and that itself is a huge, huge problem in terms of the macroeconomic productivity of the country.
And Jen, I would just say that
go ahead.
10% is exactly why yesterday when everyone's like, I can't believe Jay Powell isn't going to cut rates. Remember what the Fed chair said. He is concerned about our uncertain economic future. It's about that 10%, right?
Yeah.
That 10% is more than triple what it was a few months ago. So at least in the short term, that is going to be inflationary. And this is Great Britain, our closest ally. Okay, so
Right.
while they're boasting like we got this deal going, like that's like saying I opened the hottest restaurant in New York City, it's packed. Then you open the door and everybody eating in the restaurant is my family.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
Trump wants you to think, right? Trump wants you to think this is the first of many. And listen, he has to create this framework. He's a showman. His back is against a wall when it comes to trade. We are 3 weeks out. We know that these ports, less and less cargo ships are coming in. And the ones that are coming in have less and less cargo on them. We're 3 weeks away from our store shelves potentially looking like they did during COVID. So Trump needs to sort of change the narrative and say, we've got something going. And yes, so he has a framework for a deal with Great Britain and almost 200 other countries, and I haven't even mentioned China behind it, where it's going to be 10% or more, and they haven't even gotten started.
I mean, one of the things, even though it's a fake trade deal, I love all these analogies. There's so many you could just make up about this case. And to Chris's point, it takes years to negotiate trade deals. But one of the things that was telling today to me, and you talked about this a little bit, Chris, is there were British luxury car makers and others who were kind of celebrating out there, right?
Yep.
A bunch of people were celebrating like that. And then when Trump was asked about the dock workers and truck drivers who are worried about losing their jobs because imports from China have slowed, which is a huge, real issue, to Steph's points, happening at the ports, he basically responded, that means we lose less money. I mean, it is a disconnection, maybe a misunderstanding of economics, but what did you make of that?
It was shocking. And it was shocking. I mean, it's shocking, not surprising, which is something you say about him a lot. But, I mean, first of all, just on the politics of this, I cannot get over the fact that there was a multi-day news cycle of outrage because Nancy Pelosi had too much ice cream in her freezer during COVID.
Outrageous.
Like she's so out of touch. Like there's too much ice cream. Like
It was an expensive brand, Chris. It was a
wasn't
very high-end brand.
Yes, it was.
Okay?
It was
Probably
a very
delicious, but yeah.
But I mean, here's the guy who's like literally the golden toilet guy. Okay, there's the golden toilet, the golden stroller around, going to be like you got to give fewer toys and pencils to your kids. I don't care about the dock workers and the longshoremen. Like, and I also think what's so striking about it too, and this is something that I think honestly Wall Street still hasn't gotten through their head, is that's not a talking point. Like when he says that's good, we're losing less money, he means it. Like he sees every dollar, U.S. dollar, all all the industry that supports as essentially lost. And if he's serious about that, we are in for a world of hurt, and he really does appear to be.
Okay, but hold on. I'm going to disagree with Chris on one point, only
Please.
because when the president said that this morning, we're going to lose less money, I actually sent that in a text to kind of all my Wall Street sources, many of whom voted for Trump, and every single person responded with like an exasperated, embarrassed emoji. Right. But what Wall Street does understand is many don't actually, I don't want to say they don't care if we fall into recession. Wall Street investors are different from people running companies. People running U.S. companies are devastated, right? If you run a small business in the United States, you are panicked right now. But for Wall Street, they're just trying to figure out what's the game and how do they get in on it early. Yeah. Because when they get a signal from the White House, they can just as soon go short the market as they can long. And when we talk about luxury British automakers who are celebrating today, you know who wasn't? Ford. GM, U.S. automakers who are saying, hold the heck on. If we're now going to bring in 100,000 British cars, it's going to be cheaper than it is for USMCA compliant cars that are partially produced here and in Mexico and Canada. They're the ones saying we're getting screwed here.
Donald Trump clearly doesn't know what he's doing. And at this point, I think we can all agree that it's not exactly a secret. His economic blunders, his chaotic trade policies, his desperate rants, it's all just one big, messy cry for relevance. And you know what? Let's keep calling it out. Let's keep making him uncomfortable. Let's keep shining a light on the corruption, the incompetence, and the lies, because that's what we do here every single day. So if you're tired of the nonsense, if you want to keep holding power accountable, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're getting close to 1 million, and every single one counts. Leave a like if you enjoyed this takedown, and if you've made it this far, drop a blue heart in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Thanks for watching Miles Vexler. Stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you in the next one.